I can feel you pulling things around in there.
It's a brand new organ. Never before seen. We've all felt that the body was empty. Empty of meaning. And we've wanted to confirm that, so that we could fill it with meaning.
The world is a much more dangerous place now that pain has all but disappeared.
Surgery is sex, isn't it?
Is it?
You know it is. Surgery is the new sex.
I don't like what's happening with the body. In particular, what's happening with my body. Which is why I keep cutting it up. What do you think they'd find inside it?
Outer space.
Whoops. Sorry.
Let us not be afraid to map the chaos inside. Let us create a map that will guide us into the heart of darkness.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom? How are you?
Greetings and salutations, conceptual artists with weird body fetishes. I'm doing pretty well, Mike. How the hell you doing?
I am doing well. It's the first week officially of my kids being out of school, so this is where working from home gets dangerous, because it basically means I'm with my kids all day, every day for the next 2.5 to 3 months. So it's gonna get interesting.
Well,
Must have house stocked with lots of food at all times, basically.
And family-friendly Serbian film showings.
Yes. In every room.
Serbian film and Sallow all day.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, you think I'm tough on you kids? Well, check these out.
Check out these fascists.
All right, joining us as well, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don? How are you?
Yeah, that's great. Always great to be here. Although that may come back to haunt me today, but always fun to talk to you guys.
Okay, well, we are covering the new David Cronenberg movie. Should be no surprise. We pretty much said so at the end of last episode, and for the most part, theatrical releases will be covered as they release, so this one is no different. So, Crimes of the Future it is, and I will. Humans adapt to a synthetic environment with new transformations and mutations. With his partner Caprice, Saul, celebrity performance artist, publicly showcased the metamorphosis of his organs in an avant-garde performances. All right, written and directed by David Cronenberg. So yeah, this is a Cronenberg vehicle. Viggo Mortensen, Kristen Stewart, Lea Seydoux, I think.
Yes. Lea Seydoux.
That's the best I can pronounce it. So
You got it.
Okay. All right. So with that, we will get into our general thoughts, and I'll kick it to Venom as we always do. So Venom, Crimes of the Future. What did you think?
All right, folks. Well, as you probably remember from last week, I was very much looking forward to this movie. Something that I always try to avoid is, hype and overly anticipating any particular film. And even though I tried to fight it, it's still Cronenberg. It's his first movie in almost a decade. And it's a return to body horror. So obviously the big question is Crimes of the Future a return to the classic body horror of Cronenberg's past? And in this humble podcaster's opinion, I'm going to have to say this is not that movie. Walking out of the film, I kind of felt like it was Cronenberg light. Like, this movie feels like Diet Videodrome to me. You know what I mean? Like, it has a lot of the same elements of Videodrome, Crash, maybe even a little bit of Existence in there. but it just, to me, it was just so underwhelming. I will say the movie is a gorgeous film. As far as his filmmaking goes, that's still there. If anything, his direction has gotten better, because I will highlight some of the performances in this film. To me, the highlight of this film is in its performances. I think Viggo Mortensen does a great job as a kind of broken person in this futuristic world where humans don't feel pain and can't get infections, which obviously, for anybody who's seen the trailer, you kind of know where it's kind of going from there, where extreme body modifications and surgery are, as they say in the trailer and multiple times in the film, surgery is the new sex. And unfortunately, I was not aroused at any point in this movie, unlike Videodrome, which, both consciously and subconsciously is a very arousing film. This one for me just was not, even though this one had a lot of nudity in it. Where do I start with my issues with this film? First and foremost, it's going to be the world building. There's almost no world building in this movie. Like we get a little cold open that kind of sets up the type of humanity that we're looking at in this film. And then we go right into the story of Viggo and Caprice. Should I say Viggo's character, Saul Tenser, and his assistant Caprice. And basically, they are conceptual artists that, do basically body modifications as art, as conceptual art. I won't get too much more into plot points just in case it delves into spoilers, because I still haven't seen the trailer for this. Usually I'll watch the trailer after I see the film, but I just haven't had a chance to here. So, this is, it's very underwhelming to me. Like there's body horror, but the body horror, it's almost kind of, I don't want to say silly, but I'm having trouble putting it into words how I feel about this, because I'm not going to say I hated the film. Definitely not. It is not one of my favorite Cronenberg films. It is probably one of my lesser Cronenberg, movies that I enjoy. Like I said, from a technical aspect, this movie is great. From a storytelling aspect, it has a lot of problems. Pacing is weird throughout. I mean, You'll get this great scene with, the first bit of conceptual art between Saul and Caprice, and then you get like a 40-minute lull of just backstory and character development, and then we get the introduction of these new types of humans, which I won't get into here, but that kind of look to be looking to shape the world more into their benefit. And obviously, it's a horror film, or at least a horror adjacent film, so things do go awry. So ultimately, if you're a Cronenberg fan, I think you're still going to enjoy the movie. I can't really say that it's going to end up being one of your favorites unless you're more into the artistic and subtext of a Cronenberg film, which even with this film, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think it has a fraction of the subtext that Videodrome has. Yes, there's a lot in here about art, the world of art and how it's perceived both inside and out. Especially in this film, no pun intended, but it just, I don't know, it just felt lacking to me in almost every way. I didn't, as I've already said, I didn't dislike this film, but there's very little about it that I'm really going to be able to rave about outside of the performances. And wow, dude, Kristen Stewart was actually a human being in this movie. Like, she actually had emotions, which to me, and I don't watch a lot of Kristen Stewart, mind you, so, I'm kind of jumping on the bandwagon of a very, very old joke. I understand that, but this is the first performance where I've actually seen her emote, and that was impressive to me. And even kind of the nature of her character actually left me wanting more. I wish we would have actually had more of Kristen Stewart. Those are words I never thought would ever escape my mouth, but yeah, there it is. I actually really enjoyed her character and really wished, especially considering the part that she played in this whole, mystery of, what's actually going on with these humans that are developing new organs in their bodies. I just felt like that part of it should have been explored a little bit more. Her character, to me, seemed really, really interesting. Like I said, especially once we get the reveal of what she actually did. And ultimately, once we get that reveal, we never see her again in the film. And that's disappointing to me. It almost felt like she could have been the big bad of this movie. I mean, if this movie even has a big bad, no. It's a weird movie. It's not traditional antagonists and protagonists here. So I'm just going to cut myself off short and say it's a very well-made movie. It's a beautiful looking film, very bleak, very dark, but everything is still nice and well lit. You can see everything. It's just this story really doesn't do a lot for me. The story has potential. And then the last thing I'm going to say is they spent the second half of the movie building up an event that was going to happen that I was incredibly excited for. I'm like, okay, this is where it's going to finally be a Cronenberg movie when we get to this event that they've been hyping up, and then it doesn't happen. We don't get the event. The movie just ends. And that, to me, I mean, the movie wrote a check that the story couldn't cash, and that's upsetting to me. Because now I'm left wondering, what could have happened in that scene had they actually filmed it and put it on there? So, yeah. So overall, a good film, but just very underwhelming for me.
Okay, how about you, Don?
Yeah, I've made no secret of the past that I absolutely hate Cronenberg. He was never even a contention for a master of horror, as far as I was concerned. Even the film that I actually really like, because I only really like one of his films. I still think The Fly is his best film, but even that, I'm still not highly invested in, or like I really will go to bat and say it's like an all-time classic. So I've never really been a huge fan of him, even though a lot of his films for me fall outside the bucket that I only really find like a couple of his films to actually fall within the genre. So, I mean, Cronenberg has just never really been my guy. And to me, that continues with this. I mean, as of right now, I'm really anticipating Black Glasses, because this is going to be the worst film I've ever seen as a director's final film. This is just an absolute train wreck. A story that is just so uninteresting that I'm not emotionally invested in it in the slightest. I have no interest in anybody here. I completely forgot everybody's name 10 minutes after the film ended. And this isn't much of a complaint about that, but did anybody else ever have an issue with the dialogue in this? Because I was hoping to God that they would put subtitles up, because I couldn't hear a damn word anybody was saying in this.
It was kind of low. I mean, I won't say that I had any trouble with it. I mean, obviously I saw it in a theater, so not loud ass audio, but I can see a complaint about it, about the audio. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I could barely tell what was going on, and I mean, I doubt it would have actually clarified matters much for me, because like you said, the story to this is just absolutely all over the place. I mean, there's just nothing here going on that just draws you in and makes it actually interesting. We're dropped into this world with no rhyme or reason as to how these people have developed into what they are, why surgery is even that important to them. Everything in this film never really answers the why, and to me that's a big issue, because why is always the most important factor for me in stories, and this never answers one of them. Like, why is surgery so important? Why are these people together? Why is society developed into this condition to where you want people to mutilate themselves? Why does the surgery become gratifying? None of this is ever explained, and we're dropped into this world where that's the case. And I kind of want that. And, none of that is ever explored. Frankly, for a Cronenberg film, none of this was really all that shocking. I mean, if you're expecting surgery scenes to be shocking, that went out of vogue 20, 30 years ago. Like, it just felt like it was trying too hard to think that, seeing open wounds and sores was, shocking and revolting and grotesque. Like, seriously? I mean, hell, what we saw last week with, the birthing scene was far more revolting than anything that happened in here. So, I mean, if you're going into this, expecting to be shocked and grossed out by this, you're not going to find anything here that, hasn't been done dozens of times over. And to me, that was kind of like the big thing with this, because as much as I don't want to call this a horror film, because I don't think it is, if you're going into this thinking that this is going to be shocking or scary or just, generally disturbing like you've supposedly find in the rest of his films, there's none of it here. I see where you're coming from with the technical issues, because I don't have much of an issue to say there. Yeah, it looks good. This future society kind of, has this nice little sheen and polish to it that kind of has, it looks kind of like a future society that could emerge sometime down the line. But other than that, there's little here for me, and I'm kind of just hoping Cronenberg just retires quietly.
Okay. Were you done? You were done, Doc?
That was what the pause was for. Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Well, that's why I ended it
Okay,
on I hope he retires. I figured that would have been the perfect ending statement.
Okay. For me, yeah, I like the movie. Seems like quite a bit more than you guys did. I find this probably, I would call it a companion piece to Videodrome. If I had to pick one movie, I think it explores a lot of similar themes. I think, whereas Videodrome was more about technology or tech itself changing humans, I think this is more about the environment around us and the things we've done to the environment that have changed humans. Obviously can't really elaborate on that until spoilers, because for me, the only real issue I had with this movie was I think that throughout the story we get introduced to various side characters that kind of pop in and out without much explanation of what they're all about. We get general ideas like, okay, this guy's working on this person's kind of related to everyone because of this, but we only really get them sprinkled in. And then certain characters end up doing certain things throughout the movie that seem like it'd be something major that they just did, and it kind of moves on from it quickly. I actually thought that it moved for a movie. It's just under 2 hours. It's listed as hour and 47 on IMDb. I actually thought it flew by, even though it didn't feel like it was fast paced. There was nothing deliberately fast paced about the movie. It's just when we got to that final scene, I didn't realize that much time had already gone by. I thought all the performances were great. I definitely agree with Venom. Kristen Stewart, this is A+ for her. Anyone that's still kind of in the rut of does Kristen Stewart ever want to act on screen? Well, she's doing it here. I thought she was I'm still kind of thinking of her performance. I just I don't know. Maybe she just really identified with the role, or
I actually thought she was
something
hot
in
for
it
once.
spoke to her. But
Yeah.
you thought she was awful?
No, I thought she was hot for once.
Hot.
Oh, sorry. I think when you said it, I was.
Oh no, I was saying
so.
I thought she actually looked hot for once.
Yeah, she definitely had a plain Jane good looks to her in this one, not overtly hot, but very
well. Yeah,
very cute, definitely.
Considering all the nudity from other characters, I thought her character was the most seductive or sensual. I don't know.
Yep.
Well,
neither of those might be the right
that's...
term, but
well, no, that's what I was going on. Was that you're getting characters going full nude on this, but her being this kind of mysterious seductress that just kind of floats around in the periphery of everything, she was actually far more attractive than anybody else that we were supposed to be normally attracted to.
Yeah, I think a lot of the, not that I've ever complained about nudity, but I think some of the other scenes with nudity, it rang hollow, not for the movie itself, but I think it was just to make a point where there was nothing else to it, where just the way she was acting and the way she was delivering dialogue. And just the character herself, she was very interested for multiple reasons, and I just thought she did a good job portraying that kind of character. What else do I got? I don't know. That might be it for general thoughts. I mean, I will say this. I think Cronenberg, he is a type of director, or maybe even more writer than director. I think this is more like the stories in his writing itself, that this wouldn't be the first movie that on first watch, because even I'll even admit, like when I saw Videodrome for the first time, I was so young that yes, I appreciate all like the weird icky stuff in it, but I was way too young to understand any of the subtext. I didn't really understand what was going on besides literally what you like would audibly see on screen. It wasn't until like I saw it later on, being a little bit older, and like maybe like reading other reviews or what, really being able to dig into the material. So I think Cronenberg, as a writer director, I think that it isn't abnormal for a lot of his movies on a first watch. I mean, I would say the later half of his career, once he got outside of like sci-fi horror stuff like Eastern Promises and History of Violence, those are in a different category. I don't think you need multiple watches to really get what's going on there. But a lot of his earlier work, a lot of his body horror stuff, I think the body horror is that cool kind of window dressing to them, and it's on second and third watches that you start to dissect the material itself and maybe identify more with it, or maybe not, but just maybe more appreciation for what he was going for. So I don't even think like all my thoughts on it after this watch will do it justice, whether I end up liking it more or less on multiple watches. I just think he's that type of writer with his stuff. So I think time will tell with this one, but I do kind of like put it as a companion piece to Videodrome, because I think a lot of similar things are trying to be said, just for different reasons. But yeah, I guess I'll leave it. What was that?
Diet Videodrome again. I love that term. I'm gonna use it a lot. I might get a t-shirt made. I just, like I said, I feel like Videodrome actually went for it. It actually tried to make a very nasty, dirty statement, and it did it successfully. Whereas this one is also trying to make a nasty, dirty statement, but it does it from the lens of like an almost like an A24 director. Like it's more art house than it is visceral. And to be expected, I guess, as directors get older. It's not like they're going to get even more visceral and insane with their films. They're generally going to get a little bit more grounded, more in tune with their own filmmaking. But yeah, this one, I won't take anything away from it from a technical standpoint. Great soundtrack, great editing, cinematography. Technically, there's nothing that I can really nitpick about the film. But yeah, this story just didn't do it for me. Like, there was so much potential where this could have gone, and it just didn't go to any of those places. And mind you, I'm not looking for like an absolute gore fest, vomit-inducing body horror. I knew that's not what we were going to get with this film. But I wanted to see his progression with the statements that he's making about the nature of beauty and the nature of art. And it just, I don't know, it just wasn't there here in this one for me. I mean, this is a personal statement, obviously. Obviously, this resonated more with Mike, and that's cool. I'm jealous because I wanted to like this more. But as I, walking out of the theater, after watching it, it's like I thought, well, it was good. If any other director would have made this movie, I would probably be praising it. But the fact that Cronenberg made it, I can't really praise it. I can praise its visuals, but I can't praise its storytelling. It just didn't. And actually, I'm going to disagree with a statement that Mike made earlier, where he was talking about sometimes the first watch for Cronenberg movies doesn't always hit the same way. I've never had that problem. I love all Cronenberg. Almost every Cronenberg film I've ever seen, I've loved on first watch, including his newer stuff, History of Violence. I love Eastern Promises. Eastern Promises is such an underrated film. I wish more people, especially genre fans, would watch it. It is not a genre film by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it speaks to a lot of us in that sense. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. History of Violence is pretty good too. But yeah, man, when I watch his movies the first time, I usually have an ear to ear grin on my face. I mean, Existence, I went to the theater to see that with my wife, and we both raved about it for weeks afterwards, even though that's one of his lesser talked about films as well. So,
I was actually planning to watch that one before like last week in the lead up because I was like, oh, a new Cronenberg is coming out. I want to watch some Cronenberg, and that's the one I was gonna watch, and I just didn't have time. But I might watch it like
yeah.
tonight.
I mean, this
actually.
movie, like I said, this movie definitely feels like Videodrome, Crash, and Existence, kind of had a weird three-way baby, and that was Crimes of the Future. Again, a beautiful film with a story that just didn't resonate with me. That's all. But still a quality film, still something all Cronenberg fans should see, and all genre fans, really. It's not going to speak to all genre fans, as Don highlighted, but I still think it should be watched. And it's in theaters. It's a genre film in theaters. So I would always say go support the genre. If you want more movies like this coming out in theaters, especially more artistic horror, we got to support it. So I'm probably still going to, even though this movie didn't resonate with me very much after first watch, I am going to go see it again this coming weekend. I actually have some free time this coming weekend, so I'll check out the new release that I assume we'll be doing on Fresh Cuts, and then I'm going to check that one out again too, just to see if Mike's words hold true. Maybe my opinion will change. I'm completely receptive to that idea that potentially it could get better, but the track record I have with Cronenberg is it hits me the first time, or it probably just isn't going to hit me. So we'll see. I'm open to it. I want it to be better. Obviously, I want to like it more. So maybe this is, as Dave Z said, second watches are important. So I will definitely give this one a second watch very soon, just to see if my opinion changes. But my opinions rarely change after second watches, so I can't imagine it's going to change that much.
Yeah,
Anything?
I mean, I would say for me too, like you got to remember through the first half of his career, being a decade younger.
Yeah.
Like I was seeing like stuff like Shivers and Rabid, Scanners, all that kind of stuff when I was like 11, 12. So it was like, oh, this is cool, but beyond that, what's going on? But so by the time I saw him for a second time, then I was probably more age ready to like really dig in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. That's the great thing about Cronenberg movies. They're very subjective. I mean, he obviously has a very obvious message that he's trying to portray, but as a viewer, you could take multiple messages out of this. Hell, you could even kind of look at elements of the Me Too movement in this movie. Very, very small elements of it, but still there are elements of it in here. So,
well, did you guys kind of feel like there was almost a whole nother movie to be made with the cult people? And I don't want to elaborate on that yet because it'll devolve into spoilers, but
sure.
Like I guess that's another thing that I can mention about, that I kind of wanted to know what more was going on with them, because I almost felt like what they were up to was kind of more important, just as far as the world goes, because it was based on something going on with the environment, and they were basically like trying to speed up the process by what they were doing.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I thought that all their antics would like kind of loop around more somewhere at some point in the movie, and it was kind of like, no, like they're a catalyst for something we get later on, but not so much like the cult and their mission itself. It was more just an outcome of something that happened related. You're right, like that's how they all got linked. But
exactly. I mean, that kind of goes back to Don's point, how nothing is explored in this movie. They introduce multiple aspects. They introduce a couple of female characters that turn out to be a little bit more interesting than I thought they would be, but then they just leave it flat. Like we find out nothing about them once they do what it is they're supposed to do in the film. And, same thing with, like I said, the second half of the movie, building up this big event that sounds like it's going to be, Lovecraft meets Cronenberg, and then we don't get it. It's like, why would you even fucking mention it? Why even talk about that event and then not put it in the film? It just, it's so disappointing to me. Potentially because they hyped up that event and it didn't happen, it could be part of why this movie didn't resonate with me, because it disappointed me a little bit because we didn't get that scene. But at the same time, there's a lot more than just that kind of disappointed me with this film. So yeah. Anybody else have anything else before we get into spoilers?
Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I think I said
Yeah.
what I can for general.
Well, as Mike mentioned in the synopsis, the film is about humans that are adapting to a synthetic environment. Basically, we're introduced to a world where humans neither feel pain nor get infections anymore. Hence all the crazy body modification that we see throughout the film. Since no one has any risk of infection, they could literally perform surgery on the street, and we actually do see that throughout the film. And when I say surgery, put quotations around that word surgery. It's not like people are having open heart surgery necessarily. It's just some of the people in this world that still feel pain and still can get infections have this weird innate ability to grow organs in their body, like functioning organs, but organs that do not already exist in the human body, if that makes sense. It's not like they're growing another liver or another kidney. They're literally growing just these masses of flesh in their body that are then surgically removed in the in the guise of conceptual art. They perform the surgery in front of an audience, in front of a paying audience. And then the organ itself must be registered, which, we'll get into that a little bit because that's kind of a silly little plot point in the movie. But so basically our movie opens with a cold open of a little boy playing at the side of the beach. And when he goes inside into his house, we see that he is eating a plastic wastebasket from the bathroom. The plastic wastebasket that most of us have in our bathroom. I think I have a wicker one, but I think most people have plastic ones. But yeah, this little boy literally just, and not like he's being forced to, like he's enjoying it, like he's eating the shit out of it and just not stopping, just eat. And then his mother, the woman that we assume is his mother at this point, because she's the one with him taking care of him, she ends up smothering him with a pillow, flat out murdering him. And then as soon as she murders her own son, she calls the father, her ex-husband, and tells him unceremoniously to pick up the body of this thing that you call your son. So obviously, we've already got a cool little mystery. We've got a mom who doesn't recognize her son as her son, a boy who's eating plastic. So, we've already got a little bit of a mystery going on. So that's cool. Very Cronenberg-like. Then we are introduced to Viggo Mortensen and Lea Seydoux characters. Those are Saul Tenser. Viggo plays Saul Tenser. He is a conceptual artist. He's one of those humans that I spoke about that can still feel pain, can still get infections. I mean, he's very susceptible. We see him walking around with a mask throughout the movie, but without making a big deal about it. So it's not like it's heavy-handed pandering by any stretch. So I did kind of like that. Like I said, Caprice is his, I guess you could say, assistant, almost like a magician's assistant, where he's the one laying on the slab, but she is the one who's actually performing the surgery. And they're using something called a sark. And what that is like, it's an artificial sarcophagus that was meant for autopsies. It was meant to perform autopsies on dead bodies, but Caprice and Saul kind of modified the machine a little bit to make it now the surgery machine. So instead of performing autopsies, they use it to remove these new organs that Saul and people like Saul are growing inside their bodies. We do see other types of conceptual artists in the film. I'm sure in the trailer they show the guy covered with ears. Basically, eyes sewn shut, mouth sewn shut. Basically, I think it's supposed to be a statement to say, don't look, don't listen, or don't look, don't speak, only listen. But it really just comes off as a little silly to me. Like, literally, the laughter in the theater was palpable. Like, it was almost like we were watching a comedy. Like, very few people in the movie theater took it seriously when they saw the guy covered in ears. So. Yeah, definitely not as shocking as maybe Cronenberg had hoped, but, at least we got a good laugh out of it. Caprice and Saul are introduced to I forget the name of the guy, but he's basically, I think his name was Whippet. He runs the National Organ Registry, and basically he actually has a joke in the movie that the National Registry of Organs, or the National Organ Registry, is him. It's one person, one department. It's a one-man department. And basically what they do there is they register those new organs. What is happening here is that as the new organs are growing inside of Saul's body, Caprice, his partner, is adding tattoos to them. She's actually tattooing the organs so that when they come out, they actually look somewhat decorative. They've got like black ink like designs on them. Well, maybe not tribal, but just some cool looking designs. I think one had a skull on it. One had just some jagged edges kind of imprinted on it. Blah blah blah. And then that organ, once removed, goes to the National Organ Registry, where they hold on to it. Why? Who knows? Once again, this is kind of back to Don's point about dangling plot points throughout the movie. Like, what are they doing with these organs? Who fucking knows? But they are registering them, so there you go. Later in the film, we find out that Vigo is actually working with a police officer, basically trying to find a surgeon who's doing illegal surgeries, and potentially, doing illegal things with some of these new organs that are grown. Again, what are the illegal things that are being done? No one fucking knows. They don't tell us. And so, figure it out in your head what potentially could be happening with these new organs that are being created. And then this is where we are also introduced to Kristen Stewart. She plays Timlin, who is the assistant, Whippet's assistant at the National Organ Registry. And she's just this standoffish girl, glasses, hair tied up, like I said, definitely not a glamorous character by any stretch, but the girl next door type. And like I said, she plays his assistant, but she seems to have more of an interest in these organs than even her boss. But nobody really questions it too much until we get the reveal later in the film, but we'll get to that. And then, let's see. Vigo is then introduced to another character named Lang. Lang, as it turns out, is the father of the boy from the cold open. The boy who was eating the plastic wastebasket and the mother smothered him to kill him. So Lang is the father of this child. Brecken turns out to be the name of the child. Kind of a cool name. I kind of like that name. And basically, Lang goes to Saul, to Viggo Mortensen's character, and says, "I have an art piece that I think would be cool for you guys to do." And what it is he wants Saul and Caprice to actually perform an autopsy on the boy. And the reason they want to do or the reason that the dad at least kind of implies that he wants the autopsy done is because he wants to prove to the world that the boy is a natural plastic eater, as in he was born that way. Mike was talking about the cult of folks that are in this movie. Basically what's going on is, this is a world where, there are transformations and mutations. Food is a commodity in this world. So basically humans have adapted to consume waste product, most specifically plastic in this film. And they're actually called plastic eaters. They actually call each other plastic eaters. They're actually doing this with synthetic means. These are people who are trying to, as Mike said earlier, they were trying to kind of kick into gear the evolution of humans, working their way away from eating natural food and eating the waste product that our planet is covered with. Unfortunately, there is a side effect that they didn't realize, and the side effect is they can no longer eat normal food. They were hoping to make it so that they could eat food and plastic to try to help, the environment. But unfortunately, because of the procedure, none of them can eat normal food. They are forced to eat plastic now.
Yeah. And it's interesting they went with this because, we always say like art imitates life. And I remember reading like a story a couple of years ago that like they're finding microplastics in like people's blood now because of all the pollution and just waste on our planet. It's so much plastic in the ocean that like it's affecting like obviously sea life. So then when we eat it, it like transfers to us. So No idea if that's like why they chose this, or why Cronenberg specifically like wrote that uh, into
Well,
the
I mean,
story, but I did find it kind of interesting.
yeah, it's a great statement about the state of our environment. I mean, we as humans are the main culprit for destroying the environment that we have, this planet, the only planet that we have. And obviously, these
Hmm.
people, they wanted to try to save the planet by mutating themselves into being, plastic eaters to get rid of all this waste and try to help bring the carbon footprint for humanity down a little bit. But obviously, like I said, because of the side effect, they can only eat plastic. And so back to Brecken, like I said, Lang, Brecken's father, asks Saul to perform this autopsy. Saul, of course, is very unwilling to do it at first. Obviously there's the public outcry that could come from performing an autopsy on a 10-year-old boy in front of a paying audience. And then a bunch of other legalities as well. And obviously, the dad, Lang, is trying to prove that Brecken is a natural born plastic eater so that he can show that human evolution actually is working and progressing faster than anticipated. We'll get to the autopsy here in a little bit. Right around this point in the film, Viggo Mortensen's character gets an invitation to something called the Inner Beauty Ball, or the Inner Beauty Pageant. We all know about beauty pageants, Miss America, Miss USA, Miss Universe, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, those are about outward beauty. But when they spent the second half of this movie talking about the Inner Beauty Pageant, obviously the images in my head are going crazy. I'm like, oh, great. This is going to be like dozens of these guys with mutations, and they're going to try to show who has the coolest mutation or the most helpful for the environment or blah, 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 whatever the case may be. Nope. We never get it. We literally, our movie ends well before, before Saul even gets a chance to register for the fucking Inner Beauty Pageant. The movie just kind of ends. So yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of that's like the nature of my disappointment with this film, that they spent so much time building up this event that sounded like it was going to be fucking gnarly, and then we don't get it. So I don't know. Again, I got to question Cronenberg's choices here, but who the hell am I to question an auteur, honestly? But still. So let's see. So I've skipped a lot here, folks. I mean, there's this movie is almost 2 hours. I'm not going to do a scene by scene here with this one because it's just way too much to digest in the spoken form. It's definitely something that's more suited to watching on film. But finally, it is the I forgot. We do get a scene where we see Viggo and Caprice do. It's called the new sex. Like in the movie, they actually call traditional intercourse the old sex. Viggo even has a line in the film when Kristen Stewart's character Timlin comes in for a kiss and kisses him on the mouth. He pushes her back and says, "Oh, I'm not very good at the old sex." I thought that line was really fucking great. And obviously, anybody looking at Viggo should be able to know that because he can barely walk. He's decrepit. He has problems breathing. Nobody would assume he's good at the old sex, but there it is. So the new sex actually ends up being, like I said, a form of surgery in the sense that they're not removing any parts or causing themselves any major harm, but they are using the sarc machine, like I mentioned earlier, the sarcophagus, and actually hurting themselves. Like they're actually like stabbing themselves, slicing themselves open, things like that. And that's the new sex. Like I said, since so many people can't feel pain anymore, if the only thing that's going to cause them to feel anything is extreme body modification, then yeah, it makes sense that becomes the new sex. So there you go. And it's a pretty good scene, actually. Basically showing, butt-ass naked Viggo and Lea Seydoux basically laying on the sarc while the arms of the sarc periodically will come in and slice them with like a straight edge razor, not a straight edge, but like a scalpel. Excuse me, yeah, a scalpel. Basically just putting little cuts on them, like on their neck, on their chest. Apparently these people heal really fast because they never show any scarring. I don't know if that's, again, the human evolution of this film, that there's very little scarring. But yeah, I mean, everybody seems to heal right away. At one point in the movie, Vigo, during the first conceptual art piece, cuts his midsection straight up the middle, like completely open. And then we see him later, and there's not even a scar there. There's a horizontal scar, which we'll talk about later, because that's probably one of the creepiest things in the whole fucking movie. But there's no vertical scar like the one that we saw during the procedure. So obviously, either the machine is healing people, or people just in this world just heal a lot faster with no scarring, things like that. So finally, it is the day of the autopsy. Vigo has relented, and with the blessing of the undercover cop that he's working with, he goes ahead and agrees to perform the autopsy.
The undercover cop, that's another character. I liked what he did on screen. I just wanted more.
Exactly. I wanted more. For a movie that's almost 2 hours, I really, really wanted more of a lot of characters in this movie. I would have loved to have known more about Vigo pre this world. Like maybe a younger, Saul Tenser. Like, what kind of conceptual art was he doing before he was growing organs? Or was he even an artist to begin with? I mean, there's just so much left untold with this movie. Like I said, with the cop, with Kristen Stewart's character, everything else. It's just really unfortunate. We're also introduced to a couple of employees of the Life Firmware company. Life Firmware is the company that makes the sarcophagus. They also make Viggo Mortensen's bed and eating stand. It basically, think if Leatherface made a chair to eat on. That's kind of what that chair looked like. It basically was like bone and like not sinew, but like a little bit of connective tissue. And basically, because of all the pain that Saul goes through when he eats, the chair basically moves his body in a way that he can digest the food, so that it will go down his throat. Multiple times in the movie, he talks about how his throat is closing up. He can't really eat or drink anymore without the use of that chair.
Yeah, he has to contort every so much to even get the food down, because he can only eat like, it looks like mashed fruit, almost like it's just a cobbler or something.
It's not even cobbler. Shit, cobbler has consistency. That was just mush. That was different colored mushes he was eating throughout the film. And also, I forgot to mention, at some point in the film, when we get the explanation of the plastic eaters, we also find out that they're making a food source for themselves. They're actually making these, they look like chocolate bars. They basically look like your average Hershey bar or whatever, but they're obviously made of synthetic materials. And if someone who isn't a plastic eater eats one of these things, as we see in the film, they end up getting just violently ill and more than likely dying, because he just started puking up green stuff like crazy after he ate that candy bar. There was one guy basically who basically snatched the candy bar out of Lang's hand in one scene in the film and just started eating it. Just took his candy, basically took his milkshake and drank it. But yeah, he had a violent reaction, and this is this cult or this organization's way of kind of utilizing all the waste product in the world, processing it, and then turning it into a bar that can be like sold in stores or vending machines or whatever. So yeah, that's an important part of the film I forgot to mention. All right, so it is the night of the autopsy. As I said, Saul has agreed to perform the autopsy on the child. Lang is there. I forgot to finish my story about the two Life Firmware employees. There are two women who we see throughout the film who claim to be technicians of the sarcophagus and the bed and the eating stand, the dinner stand, if you will. Basically, saying that they're there to do updates, repairs, whatever the client needs. But then we see them actually kill one of the clients. Like at one point in the film, they knock on another person's door, someone who looks like he has the same condition as Vigo. He's very pale. He walks very slow. He doesn't breathe very hard. and they end up just murdering him unceremoniously. We don't even see it ultimately. Basically, they walk into this guy's apartment, and then literally the very next scene, we see them walking out, and we see the guy dead on the chair with what we think is a bullet hole. It looks like a small hole near his temple where blood is coming out. So, I guess most of us just kind of assume that they shot him. Back to the autopsy. Vigo is performing the autopsy, or not Vigo, excuse me, Caprice is performing the autopsy. And while she's performing the autopsy, she's obviously performing this soliloquy about, the nature of beauty and art, and, what makes a person, what makes us human, things like that. Just, a lot of artistic statements that she's saying. And then finally, we get the incision. We cut open the boy and open up the boy's chest. And what do we find? Every single organ in the boy's body is tattooed, which means those are new organs that were created after his birth. So he is not a born plastic eater, as was assumed. What we end up getting is a reveal later with the two Life firmware people, the two women who are working for Life firmware, where they end up going and speaking to Lang, the father of Brecken, after the autopsy. Lang is very visibly distraught. Like I don't know if he's pretending or what, but basically he's trying to say that he had no idea. But the two women, the Life firmware people, they both are like, no, we know what you did. You contacted Timlin, who is Kristen Stewart's character, and as it turns out, it was Timlin who actually did all the tattooing on these organs in the boy's body, and she is the one who made him into a plastic eater. She had to have done it at a very early age, like well before the boy would have had any, memories or anything. So yeah, that's the big reveal, that the boy is not a natural plastic eater. Once the two women from Life firmware make this realization, they both pull out drills and drill right into Lang's skull, killing him fairly instantly. It does look fairly painful because the drill bits aren't ultra thick or long. They're kind of small, so it looks like it's meant to be as painful a death as possible. But yeah, they literally unceremoniously take them out. They both insert their drills, and I thought at that point, I'm thinking, okay, are we finally going to get an explanation of who these two women are? Nope. We never see him again the rest of the film. Granted, there's only about 2 minutes left in the film at this point. So more dangling plot points left undone. And then basically our final scene of the film is Vigo.
What was your get? What was your get? Were they like some type of hired assassins, like undercover or something like that?
Yeah, I think that there were rules involved with using the Life firmware stuff, like the sarcophagus. And I think anybody who maybe used it incorrectly would get off. It's almost like you remember that movie? What was that movie about the organs? About people who would like lease new organs. Forrest Whitaker was in it. God damn it. I can't remember that movie.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It was the organ exchange movie where everybody, and if they didn't pay, they got repossessed. Repo Man, right? Repo Men. It was called Repo Men. Yep. That's it. Yeah. So I was thinking that maybe these Life Affirm people, or Life firmware people, excuse me. I figured they were just kind of taking out people that were using their equipment either illegally or, were doing nefarious things with them, things like that. Again, there's no explanation.
That's much more harsh than a fine.
Exactly. But again, this is my interpretation because there's no explanation in the film. I mean, we barely find out what those two women's names are. I think Burst and Juna were the names of those two women. But yeah, like I said, they're introduced. We see them naked real quick, when they're playing around with Caprice. And the fact that they are assassins, but they don't ever bother with Caprice or Saul, like, I don't know. It just felt weird that they were the ones who showed up for the repair, for the firmware update that Saul needed. Mm-hmm. And yet they don't really ever bother them. Like, so apparently Saul and Caprice weren't doing anything immoral or illegal with the equipment. So they didn't take them out for whatever reason. But anyway, like I said, the final scene of the movie is Vigo. He is sitting on his high chair, his eating chair, if you will. As usual, in every scene that we've seen where he's been in the chair, he's having a lot of trouble eating, a lot of trouble swallowing. He's having trouble just getting the spoon up to his mouth. And we see him kind of have a moment where he's just like, well, fuck it. I just can't do this anymore. I don't, it's not worth the pain that I'm going through to eat and blah, blah, blah. At this point, Caprice walks into the room with one of those chocolate bars that Lang and his group had made. And she unwraps it and gives it to him. He takes a bite out of it and as he's chewing it, he starts a smile starts to crack on his face, and he sheds a single tear before the credits begin, and that's the end of our film, folks. That is Crimes of the Future 2022. My interpretation of that ending, and I could be 100% wrong, but I think my interpretation is that Viggo Mortensen's character, Saul Tenser, actually is the first natural plastic eater, but because he denied it. Maybe he just never tried it at any point in his life. Maybe that's why he had so much trouble eating throughout the entire film. But it's like this group was trying to prove that Brecken was the first natural plastic eater when they've literally had a natural born plastic eater right there in front of their face the entire time. But even he didn't know. Even Saul didn't know until this final scene.
He didn't know. And it makes me wonder if like even the attempt, even in its most basic like mushy form, was causing like the organ stuff to happen with him, right? Like there's because like the I don't even know what you call it. I don't want to say disease, whatever they refer to it as, a syndrome, I guess, that causes you to grow extra non-human organs or whatever. Like it is acknowledged, like there is a few other people out there, but it's not like a widespread high amount of people that maybe this is like, it's kind of a reveal that like, okay, natural plastic eaters, because of everything with the environment, these people are slowly being born and like evolved into that. And maybe because they were not aware of this and they were eating the food, that's I'm trying to digest human food, was creating these organs. And the reason I say that is because it's not like, it was creating like a new lung or a heart or an intestine. It was just unidentifiable masses of flesh.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe
they called them functioning organs. But what's the function? They never told us.
Exactly. Because I thought at one time someone referred to it as like alien organs. Like a alien from another planet, right? I think that's more what they meant.
I can't imagine. I mean,
but that was my interpretation of the ending. Like, I think like yes, the reveal was like plastic eater, and then I took it to mean like maybe because he was a plastic eater, that eating the human food, even with all the assistance from the, I guess you want to call them like flesh machines or whatever. That's what was causing the organs to grow.
Potentially, yeah. No, definitely. Like I said, this is a movie much like many Cronenberg movies where it's really it's left up to the interpretation of the viewer. If you think this is a statement on the environment and the state of the world, then you're right. If you think this is a statement on the nature of beauty and art, you're also right. And if you think that this is just, a weird Canadian's fever dream, then I'm not going to say you're wrong on that one either. So, like I said, I've said a lot of negative things about the movie, but ultimately I didn't hate the time that I spent with it. For the most part, I was on board, but just every time they would leave a dangling plot point unfulfilled, it just made me more and more disappointed with the film. The fact that we know nothing about the cop, nothing about the assassins, nothing about, maybe not nothing, but very little about Timlin. Like, even once we get the reveal that Timlin is the one who was responsible for what happened to Brecken's body, we never see her again. There's no repercussions. There's no nothing. She just disappears. Like she's not even discussed. Like, she's not even spoken about. The movie just ends. And I don't know. I mean, I know Cronenberg likes to be ambiguous with some of his films, and obviously we all know I appreciate a little bit of that in my horror films, but this was too much. And like I said, the whole you mentioned how we don't know how widespread this whole thing is. This goes back to my comment earlier about the lack of world building. There's no world building in this movie. We don't know if all of this is only happening in this town, in this city. Is it the whole world? Is it different in other countries? Maybe in more third world countries, the syndrome acts a little bit different. I don't know. Just give us something. There's no world building here at all, and that's too bad because honestly, the world building is some of my favorite parts of Cronenberg movies with Videodrome and Crash and the Fly. Yeah, but maybe not The Fly so much. That's definitely more of an isolated story, but Crash and Videodrome, definitely. They had a broader scope and they had a better sense of building the world, whereas here, like I said, it's just there's no world building whatsoever. It's very little character development here. It's like we meet the characters, we get a couple of little tidbits about who they are, and then boom, they just go and do whatever it is they're going to do. Which is fine. I don't usually have a problem with that. But in this movie, with some of the interesting characters that we had, I really would have liked to have seen a little bit of expansion on some of them. Now, like I said, the movie's already almost 2 hours long, so I'm not saying I want a 2.5-hour movie, especially not this one. But there's definitely a lot of story left to be told in this world. The way that they left it, the way that the ending kind of left it. The dangling plot points, the characters who we have no idea. The whole thing with the cop, it's like there was no culmination there either. The cop just kind of disappears. Vigo meets him a couple of times. They have a conversation, and then he's just gone forever. So, what can I say? It's a incredibly well-made film that to me is slightly flawed, but. Hopefully you guys liked it more than I did. I really, really hope you liked it more than I did.
Yeah, the only justification I have for the cop kind of disappearing is once the kind of leader of the cult is murdered. I guess that takes because really the cop was trying to enlist people to like infiltrate the cult and take them down. But maybe they're like, well, now that the leader's dead, my mission's over.
But the thing is that the cop was more interested in the doctor that got him into the inner beauty pageant. You remember that? Not the guy from the organ registry. He was obviously the judge, but the doctor that he went to see, like right before he went to see that guy, Vigo and the cop had a scene where it seemed like they were kind of targeting him somehow. Because the cop even says, "Oh, you got an appointment to see that guy? Good, go see him." Almost like he suspects him of something. But again, that was left dangling. Like that particular character, we see him for one, not the cop, but the doctor guy. We literally see him for one scene. He mentions the inner beauty pageant a couple of times, and then that's it. We never see him again. So, yeah, that's going to be my biggest complaint with the movie is just the lack of of discernible plot points and finishing the plot points. It just seems like there's a lot of plots in this film that are left unresolved. And, again, that could be what Cronenberg's going for. So who knows? I hope you guys like it more than I do. That's all I can say.
I think I'm lower than everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you've already said you're not a Cronenberg guy. So, there's nothing wrong there at all. Ultimately, even I, who am a Cronenberg guy, am not ultra high on this film. I've already said my piece about it. It's a solid film. It's just not. It's not anything I'll return to too much. Like I said, I'm going to watch it again next weekend to get that second watch in. But based on my past experiences with second watches, I can't imagine it's going to change my rating too much. So that's it for me, Mike.
Okay, well, I guess with that, it wraps up our discussion on Crimes of the Future by David Cronenberg.
Yay!
Let's go around and find out where else we could be heard.
Well, let's see.
Venom, what else you got out right now?
Nothing new since the last time we spoke. Creature Comforts episode 9 is still the latest episode. We look at Cloverfield with our special guest, David Garrett Jr. On the main show, our last episode was still episode 45, I believe, 45 or 46. I keep forgetting the numbering on that one. we again, unfortunately, had to postpone the recording of episode 46 or 47 due to me having a physical issue yesterday. I woke up feeling like garbage. So, yeah, podcast wasn't going to happen. But that'll be happening this weekend. And then Creature Comforts episode 10 will also be recording this weekend. Because of Father's Day this month, I figured we should go ahead and record shows a little bit earlier. We tend to do Creature Comforts towards the end of the month, but because June 19th is Father's Day, we're going to go ahead and do it this coming Sunday. And that on that episode, we are going to look at the 2010 film by Gareth Edwards called Monsters, a movie that makes perfect sense for us. And the thing that's going to be really different about this one is it's going to be a first-time watch for all three of us. So this is going to be interesting. Obviously, Gareth Edwards directed the first legendary Godzilla movie, the 2014 Godzilla movie.
Oh, that's who it was. I thought it was the guy that directed The Raid.
No, I don't think so. I don't think Gareth Edwards directed that. I could be wrong, but yeah, he definitely.
I don't know why. I always thought that was the guy that did The Raid.
Because this, what do you call it? The movie that we're reviewing on Creature Comforts, Monsters, that's the movie that actually got him the Godzilla job. He actually, I mean,
who the hell am I thinking of? Who? I don't know. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm just saying. I always thought it was The Raid that got him Godzilla.
That's the story I heard, was that it was Monsters, but I mean, I guess I could be wrong.
I don't know. I always thought the guy that did The Raid was the one that did Godzilla. Maybe I'm thinking of a different person.
Potentially, or a different Godzilla, potentially too. I'm not sure.
I gotta find out who directed The Raid.
That's The Raid Redemption, right, from 2011?
Yeah, the first one.
Gareth Evans.
That's
Yeah, Gareth Edwards is the guy that we're looking at.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Oh wow, they almost look alike too. That's funny.
Ooh, wow,
I'm looking
really?
at pictures.
Oh, I didn't even know what they look like. I was just going off the name. Wow. Okay,
Right.
so that makes even more sense then, because their names are so similar.
Exactly. Yeah, the Raid 2, Apostle. Those are all Gareth Evans. And then Gareth Edwards is Monsters, Godzilla. I forget what else he's done, but yeah.
Okay, well, sorry to distract, but yeah. Okay, cool. Now I know that. Well, I actually learned this was the fact for the day then.
There you go. Awesome. And I think that's it for me. Like I said, I had that last guest appearance on the Dark Parade. I'm not even sure if that episode has been released yet, but we looked at the Bride of Frankenstein, which is my favorite Universal classic. And that's it for me, Mike. Not a whole lot on the podcast front from me lately.
All right, Don, how about you?
Yeah, again, not much else. Just the latest episode of Creature Comforts. And, now I know what director I'm talking about on the upcoming one. Latest episode of Horror Countdown, I was joined by an actor friend of mine. I said his name on the beginning of the show, and I only said it once. I think his name is Troy Elke. I'm not sure who. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a weird spelling too. So I kind of just I said it once, and I just kept on calling him Troy because I didn't want to attempt to pronounce his last name again. But yeah, he and I looked at our favorite genre crushes. So not necessarily our favorite actresses, but just the ones that we all kind of thing for. So. Yeah, it was pretty fun. Not one of our longer discussions, but yeah, it was a fun time. That one's available everywhere. Yeah, not much else that I know of. So I think that's just about it for me. All
right, and for me, this is it. Fresh cuts. Since the main show got postponed, it's just fresh cuts. Speaking of which, are we Is there anything theatrical coming out this
Well,
week?
Watcher.
I can't remember.
Watcher, right?
The
Yeah,
Watcher?
I think Watcher. Yeah, I think Watcher came out last Friday too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, because I
okay.
think
Is
it
it?
was, yeah, because we said that there was one week where there was two, and I think that was this one. Because I think it was
Okay.
Crimes. I think it was Crimes
Yeah.
and Watcher. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Now, do you know, is it expanding screens this week, or is it just that?
It's
'Cause
playing at
I think
AMC here. It's playing at the
Okay.
Metroplex.
Well, I know
here.
my city had screenings for it last week, but it's not like everywhere like most wide releases are. So I'll have to see.
It's part of the AMC Thrills and Chills series, so it should be playing at AMC for at least a few weeks. They never play it for just 1 week, unless it's a special engagement where it's like one night only, like that Lin Shaye movie from a couple of years ago. But otherwise, yeah, it should still be in theaters this week.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, then that'll probably be our next movie then. Watcher with the main lady from It Follows, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, that sounds right. What? No.
What's her name? Like Malcolm Monroe? What's her first?
My,
Her last name's Monroe.
I think it's Micah or
Micah Monroe, maybe.
Micah Monroe. So, hey, sounds
Yeah.
good.
She's
I'll
It
go
Follows
with it.
and The Guest, right? Are the two big ones that everyone should know her from.
Yeah. If it's the girl I'm thinking of, yeah, I think that's her.
Makika Monroe.
Makika. Okay, there was an extra K in there for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So that's probably going to be the next movie that we cover next week on Fresh Cuts. So yeah, we'll be back in a week's time. But until then, well, thank you everyone for listening, and let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
Adios, folks. Don't cut into your own flesh for sexual pleasure. It always ends up bad.
All hail the new sex.
Very nice.
Or is it long live the new sex?
Hmm.
They both work, I guess.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Peace.